Hey guys, this is Carrie, and in this video I wanted to complete my AP Create task by answering the questions from the course exam description. So when it comes time for you to answer these questions, I'm going to share you on a template where you can enter in your answers that will have the questions built into it. But for me, I'm going to pull these questions directly from the AP Create task. So I believe that yesterday we saw it was page 196 of this document that has the AP Create task instructions for students. Great. So let's see, let me zoom in a little bit here and make this a little bit larger. Okay, great. So in the last video, we looked at coding the program code, and there were a number of things that we had to check off that our program code included. What we're going to look at now is we're going to look at how these things come up in our written responses. So I think it's a good idea for me to not just have the questions open, but to also have my program open. So let me go to my REPL.it and open up my program. So I'm going to include all of these questions in the template that I give you, and then you're going to be submitting the answers to these questions online. But for me, I don't have these ready yet. So for my written responses, this is part 3 of the Create task, written responses. You'll have a much better looking Google document for yours, but mine I'm just going to be doing like this. And so maybe I can do a table here for each question. So here I'll do a part 3A, and then question, gosh, I'll do part 3A here, and then I'll do question I here. So describe the overall purpose of my program. I'll copy and paste that. And the overall purpose of my program, maybe I'll mark with an answer here. And I'm using just the stem from the question, the overall purpose of my program. The overall purpose of my program is, and let's go over here, to create a web app that allows users to encode any text they enter using a Caesar cipher with a shift number of their choice. So to demo this, we can encode any text they enter. Carrie is a computer science teacher, exclamation points. And we'll shift it by 2, we press encode, and we get this. We could encode it by 3, and we get that. Awesome. All right, let's take a look at the next part. Describe what functionality of the program is demonstrated in the video. So for part 2, this will be the next thing. So part of your Create task is going to be to submit a video where you demo your code. So maybe you could imagine how I would demo this code. It would be just to do examples like this. So answer. In the video, I illustrate that various or text with a variety of letters, of symbols, of characters, including uppercase and lowercase letters, spaces, and punctuation symbols can be encoded by the program using a variety of shifts. Okay? Describe the input and output of the program demonstrated in the video. So this is one of our requirements, is that our program includes input and output. And this is certainly the case in my program, which is good because it's supposed to be an example that I believe would earn full credit. So here are the input values. And I'm going to try to give the data type of what's being inputted. So the input values are, let's see, it's going to be a string, a number, and then also a click from the user. The input values, or the inputs taken from the user are a string of characters to encode, a number to shift by, and a click on the mouse on a button, click on a button to run the program. The output is the string of characters inputted by the user, encoded using the Caesar cipher with a shift number that the user specified. This output is shown on the page, on the web page. So I think I've described the output. Let's see, did I say a string? The output is a string of characters. So I'm being really careful here to identify the data types: string, number, click, string in my answer. Okay, hopefully this is a good illustration. Next up, we have part 3b. So for part 3b, let's see what I have to do. I'm going to create another table here, tools. And this will all be made for you so that you can easily format yours. So part 3b1, the first program code segment must show how data have been stored in the list. So it looks like what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be copying and pasting a program code segment that shows how data has been stored in a list. Let's see. I think for this one, I'm going to talk about, I've got two different lists to choose from. I've got the alphabet list, and I also have this string list, which converts the input string, and you can see it in my console here, which converts the input string to a list. So you can see it here. I'm going to choose the second one, actually. So code segment, well, this is going to be my answer. And then I'll put maybe code segment, line 37, like that. Capture and paste two program code segments. So this is the first one. I'll call this code segment 1. I've captured and pasted it. So I copied this from my code and put it here. And then the second program must show how the data in the same list is being used, such as creating new data from the existing data or accessing multiple elements in the list as part of fulfilling the program's purpose. So let me see how this is happening in my code. So for the answer here, I'm going to copy and paste the second code segment described up here. Code segment just means a small part of code. So code segment 2 here is going to show how I'm using this to generate new data. So the way that I'm using this to generate new data is I'm using a for each loop to go through that list. So I have a big section of code here. This will be lines 42 to 65. Is that really the whole thing? Let's see. So take each of these, and if the character is doing this, yeah, wow, it's a big chunk of code. Line 43 to line 65, right there. Now, I believe that I am going to be also explaining this in part 3 here. Okay, cool. Then provide a written response that does all three of the following. So I've got my code segments. That's all I have to do here. And now I'm going to need to kind of analyze the information that I've added to the question document. Identifies the name of the list being used in this response. The name of the list is the variable name here. So if I look back at code segment 1, let me actually just space that out a little bit more. The variable name is string list. Great, I've answered that question, even though it's a short answer. Describe what the data contained in the list represents in your program. Oh my gosh, my copy and paste is struggling here. Okay, so let's see what it contains. My list, string list, contains the characters in the string inputted by the user prior to being encoded using the Caesar cipher. The string list, well, let's see, my list, string list, contains the characters in the string inputted by the user prior to being encoded. I think that's really what it describes. Maybe I'll put an example here. For example, if the user inputs Carrie is my name, well, that's too long. Carrie, yay. Then string list will store C A R Y space, because the space character is included, Y A Y exclamation point. And that will be it. Okay, cool. I think this is a very complete answer. Let's see, for 5, explain how the selected list manages the complexity in your program by explaining why your program code could not be written or would be written differently if we did not use the list. So we learned when we were learning list that one of the main purposes of a list is that it allows us to describe this whole group in a single variable. So I'm going to start with that. I am able to reference my string list using a single variable. This is really helpful because the number of characters inputted by the user is unknown by the program. By referencing this group as a single variable, I am easily able to iterate. Now remember, this is a fancy word for loop, to iterate the process of translating characters for every item in the list without having to know how many items, how many characters the user will be inputting. You can see this for each loop in code segment 2. If we did not use a list, I am not sure how the program would work with the string of variable length and look through the string character by character. Okay, let's see. I'm going to look at question 3C now. So question 3C has a couple of parts. So capture and paste 2 program code segments you developed during the administration of this task that contain a student-developed procedure that implements an algorithm used in your program and a call to that procedure. Okay. So let's see. I'll make the table here for this one. This will all be provided for you. The first program code segment must be a student-developed procedure. So now as I'm going through this checklist, I'm feeling like my code may be a little bit incomplete. My program does have a name, but I haven't defined the return type, so let me add that as a comment to my program here. My procedure returns a string called output, which represents the encoded, the input string encoded with the Caesar cipher. So now I think I've got that part answered here. So it has a name and return type. It contains and uses one or more parameters that have an effect on the functionality of the program. So parameters means the input values. My procedure has two input values, so it has two parameters, and it implements an algorithm that uses sequencing, a step-by-step procedure, selection, so different things using if and else depending on what the element is, and iteration, a loop, like the for each loop here. So I think my procedure now satisfies all of the requirements, so I'm going to copy and paste my named procedure here. So I'll specify lines 30 to 71, define the procedure. And then I'll paste it in using a command Shift V. Okay. The second program code segment must show where your student developed procedure is being called in your program. So called means